Hey everyone, I'm Clayfect. Welcome, and to my Clayfuls, welcome back. Today we are diving into H.P. Lovecraft's universe, making the monster Cthulhu. As a baby, we are going to hear a little bit more about Cthulhu as a monster, plus we got to see it through Clayfect eyes. So without further ado, let's get started.
He took 100 pounds of clay, and then he said, hey listen, I'm gonna fix this world today, because I know what's missing.
Now, I will say right off the bat, I don't know much about H.P. Lovecraft's universe or the monster Cthulhu. I was pressured, inspired by my good friend Clayfect to make this monster. And after I had looked at a lot of reference photos, I simply fell in love with it and knew I had to make it. Starting out by building a baby body that was incredibly creepy to me, maybe because it didn't have a head yet. But while I'm making this lump of clay look hopefully sort of decent, why don't I tell you what Google have told me about H.P. Lovecraft's monster Cthulhu? A quick disclaimer though, I am not an expert in any way of anything with H.P. Lovecraft, so please don't come for me. And with that being said, let me tell you about Cthulhu. Now, from what I can gather, Mr. H.P. Lovecraft was, if not the father, then a great influence on the subgenre called cosmic horror. So much in fact that there is a whole nother subgenre now called the Lovecraftian apparently. And in his universe he made the monster Cthulhu. A weird creature with a weird name, but maybe that's because we as humans are not supposed to be able to pronounce Cthulhu's name correctly, since he is a high priest of the old ones, an extraterrestrial species that were here long before us humans. They are not able to die, so they sort of dwell deep inside the earth or in Cthulhu's cage, deep down in the sea, forever watching us. Though they are pretty indifferent to us humans and what we are doing. However, just like all the other old ones, Cthulhu does have telepathic abilities and can spike fear and anxiety in any man he wish. Even looking upon Cthulhu, that is a mix between a dragon, a man, and a squid octopus thingy, will make men go mad. Cthulhu can aid us in stripping away our morality, an inferior concept for the old ones, so mankind can shout and kill and revel and enjoy themselves in a destructive revelry of ecstasy and freedom. And that was just a tiny passage of H.P. Lovecraft's story called of Cthulhu, making this creature one of the most scariest creatures I've ever heard about, I have to say. But it sort of makes sense since Lovecraft himself was battling with anxiety, night terrors, and apparently hated seafood. There is so much lore about this monster that it was difficult for me to grasp it all, and I doubt I have, but I think that is sort of okay, because the monster, the fable of Cthulhu, has been transformed since then. Many authors and artists have drawn heavily inspiration from this monster, being it from a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, where there is a pirate that looks half like a squid, or my very own interpretation of what Cthulhu would look like as a baby. And with that, guys, let's put a little bow on the lore of Cthulhu for now and move back to the sculpture where we are going to Cthulhify this baby. And for that we are going to need some blocks. Because Cthulhu might be a scary priest that can make us poop ourselves in fear. But as a baby, I picture him more like a clever little playful fella that loves playing around with blocks. So as you saw, I cut some squares that was then baked and then sanded down. So they will be ready for the hands we are making just now. And it was at this point that I actually started to have really fun with the sculpture. Because now we are moving away from the creepy headless baby thing and on to the dragon aspects of this creature. Starting by giving him a set of claws that would make any respectable monster proud. I made them out of translucent clay and pre-baked them before I plugged them into the fingertips. And after that, all I had to do was shape the hands before I placed them and then blended them in. Now, my Pinterest definitely think that I have gone baby crazy because I had to look at so many different photos of babies holding blocks to get the right body language. And not to stroke my own ego or anything, but I think I nailed this one. But with the hands safe and secure on Cthulhu's body now, it was on to the wings, where I built up a little amateur wire for it before I put a thin layer of cross clay over it and then cut it into shape. I don't know why, but I always dread making wings. Be it on a bird or on a dragon or a monster like this one. I'm never happy when I make wings. What would make me happy, however, is for you to like, comment and subscribe if you like my content. And thank you to all my Clayfuls that have already done so. But with that, I get a cue from my assistant telling me that it is time to see Cthulhu through Clayfect eyes. So while I'm finishing up the wings, giving some texture, and put on a seaweed diaper for our little Cthulhu, let me tell you what I think. Because I don't think our little octopus boy here is that bad of a guy. I mean, at this point when I'm sculpting him, he is just a baby. Abandoned deep down in the sea. And that fact alone is just heartbreaking. And that's not all of it. If you look at the octopus, it is a very smart creature. And the dragons are always portrayed like these wise and clever beasts. Now, I will not speak of mankind's intelligence. I'll let you be the judge of that. But since Cthulhu is a mix of dragon, octopus and mankind, I think we can safely conclude that this is a smart little guy we are dealing with. So not only is he abandoned, he must also be bored out of his flicking mind even with the blocks. So of course he's going to get into some mischief, especially with his telepathic abilities. I'm pretty sure that the fear, the anxiety, the removal of morality of mankind is just an unfortunate byproduct. I don't even know if he has a clue that he's doing it. So for me, we can't really blame this little guy. We should blame the ones that abandoned him to live deep down in the sea. And there's a little, but not all, I have to say about Cthulhu. Now let's get back to the sculpture. Cause now it's time to plug the pre-baked wings into his back before we blend it in with some more clay. Now I would have made a joke about winging it with the wings, but I think I have worn out that joke, so let's just skip ahead to where we are starting playing around with the blocks. I used liquid sculpey to glue them together, and normally I would be worried that it wasn't going to be sturdy enough when I did it like that, but spoiler alert, this whole sculpture is going to be coated in resin. Because I want this water effect with the sculpture. So I'm not that worried about how sturdy the blocks are going to be. And with that, the sculpture was going into the oven. And I was going to work on its head. And while I'm doing that, why don't we talk a little bit more about my interpretation of Cthulhu? Because in my opinion, this little high priest is very, very misunderstood. You see, you can say that he brings out fear, but you can also say that he's maybe just going a little bit overboard, and what he wants to give us is caution. Now, I can't twist the fact that he wants to erase the human's morality, because morality is, as you know, a very, very important tool in making us better humans. But what if Cthulhu never had been taught that? What if he doesn't know that it's actually important for us to have our morality? Then it just looks like an unnecessary set of rules and boundaries. So I think that Cthulhu in his own way is actually trying to help us, misguided that he is. And that is my conclusion on Cthulhu, and why I decide to give him a more playful and happy expression instead of a gloomy and doomy one. So now, with his head in place, I start working on his testicles.
What?
Testicles.
Stop it. Get some help.
Tentacles, for crying out loud. I don't know how much of this my editor is going to bleep out, but believe me guys, it's not on purpose. It's just a really, really hard word to say when you have a Danish accent. Why can't I have an Irish or Scottish accent? I mean, they sound cool no matter what they do. But unfortunately, I haven't, so we are going to call them squid arms for the rest of this video. Now, with the details of the suction cups on the squid arms in place, I start to put them onto the face and blending them in, using cosplay yet again to make it a little bit more durable. Also because I decided that one of his squid arms should be holding one of the blocks, making a complete nightmare for myself later on. But that's painting Clayfect's problem, not sculpting Clayfect apparently. But now with all his squid arms on his face, it is time to define the head a little bit more and giving it some texture. Before it's on to his final bake. And I have to say, I am just so happy with how he came out. I couldn't get my arms down. I am very satisfied with this little fella. Even though I didn't know much about Cthulhu, I really think I got him cohesive enough so everyone, even though it's a baby, can see that this is Cthulhu, the sea monster we are talking about. Now for the painting, I actually had a very mixed experience with it. Because since I decided there was going to be letters on the blocks, you can probably guess the blocks was going to be a nightmare. However, Cthulhu himself was actually pretty fun to paint. I used a lot of different greens and turquoise colors and just dry brushed them on wherever I felt like they would be perfect. And even though I am colorblind and couldn't see all the nuances, that part is only for you guys. I have been told that he ended up looking pretty good, and I just really had fun with playing around with it. I just love the nuances, especially in contrast to the metallic color I decided to go on with the wings. And with the body and the wings done, it was pretty much just details work and the blocks that I was cursing almost as much as I was cursing painting the suction cups on the back of the squid arms. I mean, It took a long time, especially when I tried to paint and write on the blocks. You can't see it, but this is actually speeded up with 300%. That's how slow I had to go to make it sort of readable. I do, however, think it really was worth it, and I am very happy with the result. So now all I had to do was clean him up a little bit before I gave him to Mr. Clayfect. He is the resin master of this channel, and I couldn't think of safer hands to put my sculpture in. I am just so happy how he came to be and how he turned out. Also, with the resin pool, Mr. Clayfect decided to paint all around him, all in order to give him this wet look. And with that, all he needed was a little bit of curing time. And I think that is it for this sculpture and it for this video. Though not it for the drama. I have to admit, I was so proud when my two devious helpers, Mr. Clayfect and Pinkfect, both wanted this sculpture. It really got into a heated debate, but Pinkfect actually managed to win over Mr. Clayfect, and she needs to teach me how. Though I have to say, even though I love Cthulhu, I am happy she got it because I have no more room, no matter what Mr. Clayfect says. And with that, guys, unfortunately, it is time for me to sign off. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like my interpretation of this little baby Cthulhu. I think he turned out amazing, and I couldn't be happier with him, if I have to be honest. And I usually am, just like I honestly hope to see you next time. But if you can't wait until next time, why not click on the square to the right, where you're going to see a baby Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas get made. But until then, as we would say here in Denmark, hold dig munter.